Welcome to Scale Model Workshop. In this episode, I want to take a brief look at one of the main ways the airbrush was used in the past, how it stacks up against current technology, and how it might have an effect on how we finish our models. If you model any sort of military subjects, you've probably spent some time looking at tech manuals. Have you ever wondered about the images? Are they drawings? Or are they photographs? Most of the time, they don't quite look like either one. What you're looking at is classic photo retouching done in large part by airbrush. Here's a simple example. It starts with this photograph. The artist uses various techniques with masks, airbrushing, eraser, pen and brush to render this image. The final image actually conveys more information about the object than the original photograph, and that's extremely useful, especially in the case of a tech manual, where you want to enhance specific functional elements. Airbrushing for graphics and photo retouching was and still is the domain of precision double-action airbrushes, and the typical materials used back in the day were lamp black watercolor, retouch grays, tempera, and dyes. The use of airbrushing for graphics and photo retouching declined dramatically as computers and software became more powerful. What once took much time and talent to perfect can now be handled in a few mouse clicks by anyone with a rudimentary skill set. Or can it? Any gradients created on a computer are limited to 256 distinct steps from white to black. This leaves you with 254 shades of gray. This is the current limitation of the digital world, and it applies to any sort of image on a computer. Most of the time this works out okay if you're going from a very dark color to a much lighter color over a relatively short distance. The steps may not be that noticeable, but if you're trying to create a subtle gradient over a greater distance, you might start to see what's known as banding, as you stretch the limited steps over a greater distance. This principle applies to photographic images as well, and it's one of the main reasons why you'll see someone say, "The model looked much better in person." Look at a histogram of an image straight from a camera or a scanner. You can see that the image takes full advantage of all 256 steps. But what happens if you alter the image to try and lighten the shadows or darken the light areas? You can see in the histogram how you've thrown away some of the information and reduced the already limited number of steps. This reduces the subtle tones even more and begins to introduce what's known as posterization. Likewise, current HDR images, high dynamic range, try and squeeze the maximum amount of information from the shadows and the light areas, sometimes creating an overly vivid or contrasty image. Add the destruction that occurs with JPEG compression, and you quickly have an image that no longer comes close to giving you the subtle information that would be helpful in creating a truly realistic finish. Computers, cameras, and current printing processes try different schemes to work around these sorts of issues. But the simple fact is, given the limitation of current technology, this little analog device is more capable of creating the subtle gradients that we see when looking at actual objects. So here's the dilemma. If you're finishing your model to match what you see in a digital image, especially one taken off the web, you're allowing the digitally limited image to become your reality. And that's okay if that's the effect you're going for. For example, I constructed this model in an attempt to create a 3D representation of an image in a tech manual. But I think it's a good idea to keep in mind that when you're painting or weathering your model, The airbrush you're using is capable of creating more subtle effects than you can see in a digital image. One of the rules of thumb when I first started weathering, back in my model railroading days, was that if the effect had become too obvious or dominating, I probably went too far. And again, why some of the best-looking models on a contest table don't always look the best in an image on your computer. Subtle smooth gradients, free of grain, are the domain of the best double-action airbrushes. These offer the ultimate in atomization and control. Two of the main features I'll be looking at with the next video on double-action airbrushes. I hope this short discussion has given you a few concepts to think about. So long for now, and I'll see you next time.